Australia's wild camel industry is struggling after an estimated 160,000 head were shot in a national culling program. While reducing the number of feral camels has taken the pressure off sensitive environmental areas and farm infrastructure, critics say it wasted millions of dollars and raised questions about the welfare of animals shot from helicopters. With demand for camel meat rising, the question is being asked, should wild camels be seen as a pest or a resource? And a warning, this report from Tahmina Ansari contains some distressing images.
In the rugged rangelands of Central Australia at Kings Creek Station, southwest of Alice Springs, they're farming camels. Ian Conway has spent all his life in the arid zone mustering camels from the wild for more than 40 years. It's an opportunistic harvest, with about 200 camels sold each week as meat for domestic and export markets, as well as a growing camel milk industry. Live camels are the backbone of his business. So where are these camels going?
These have been taken out of the bush to be sort of slightly educated before they go. They're not trained, but we have to yard them and run them in fence lines so that when they go from here, they'll go into the milking farm in Victoria. And this is a small lot of the 500 that will go from here between now and 31st of December.
The demand for camel meat is growing at a rapid rate in Australia and in Asia and the Middle East.
Look, not only me, but all the other people that deal with camels get requests every day. And I can put you onto a fellow who gets at least 4 or 5 requests a day for camels. A meat source that should be used as a viable industry within this part of the country, because they survive much better than cattle, in fact, in the western desert regions of Central Australia.
I'm Tahmina Ansari and I'm an Afghan-born Australian. My parents migrated from Afghanistan in the early 90s. When I learnt about the role of the Afghan cameleers and the camel trains and how they played a vital role in opening up the outback, I was fascinated. And it was this fascination with camels that's led me to this story. Camels opened up the vast expanses of Central Australia, first arriving in 1840. Camels were the road trains of the bush. The Afghan cameleers serviced the most remote corners of Australia, carrying building and railway materials, food, furniture, water, medicine and mail. The camel was the only animal that was able to survive the dry, hot climate. But once modern transport took off, the Afghans released the camels into the wild, and since then they've thrived. For cattle station owners like Ashley and Lindy Severin, camels are a big problem.
2007-8, there was quite a lot of rain around Alice Springs and no rain out here, and we had really big problems with the camels, significant issues where we lost hundreds of kilometres of fences in a very short period of time, a lot of damage to infrastructure, which meant that we couldn't run our normal beef management program. So we couldn't wean calves, we couldn't keep bulls away from heifers, so we lost all of that ability to run our normal beef production.
The damage cost thousands of dollars, and the Severins say it took more than 3 years to recover. New fences built to protect their precious water from camels cost them $2,000 a kilometre. So how high are these fences?
So this fence is, almost 6 foot, basically, so significantly taller than me, and very different in structure to what we would normally do with a 4 barbed wire fence. So we've got 3 heights of cable, and they're all tie-wired onto the mesh, single piece of mesh. We've got the star pickets that are driven into the ground to give it some of the sideways stability, and then the big pieces of steel that are concreted 3 feet into the ground as well to give it that really structural stability.
Motion cameras were set up on the fences to track the movements and patterns of the wild camels.
We expected that we would have big numbers over the summer. There'd been some rain, there'd been a shower of rain, there'd been big fires and a shower of rain, and we had a little bit of green pick. We were recording where we were seeing camel activity, where we were fixing fences, where we were shooting camels.
In 2012, overwhelmed by the large numbers, the Severans pushed hard for a national camel feral management program.
Hi Glenn, it's Lindy from Curtin Springs.
Oh, g'day Lindy.
Just wanted to give you a bit of an update about what's been happening out here.
Oh, that'd be great.
The feral management program was headed by Glenn Edwards from the Northern Territory Parks and Wildlife Service.
Yeah, I've got a map open in front of me now. Yeah, well, that sounds good. I mean, that management that we've done around Curtin Springs sounds like it's been pretty effective.
Between 2009 and 2013, more than 160,000 camels were culled through the project. Government contractor Ninty One monitored the camels, while each state and territory used aerial culling to reduce the numbers.
It was about a 10-year process, really, before we saw some large-scale management occurring on the ground. And so I said that back in 2001 we did a big aerial survey in the NT, became aware from that there were some issues in terms of camel numbers and impacts. We set out from then to try and raise the profile of the camel issue in terms of needing some sort of management to occur, and realised pretty early on that camels did occur across a large swathe of Australia, and there would have to be some sort of national coordination to the management.
The cull has been hailed a success, but there are still an estimated 300,000 feral camels left.
In terms of achieving a quick reduction in camel numbers and impacts around those environmental asset sites, it was probably the only tool that could be used. The removal of camels for commercial purposes is a relatively slow process, and it probably alone could not have achieved the density reductions that had to be achieved in that 4.5-year time frame.
The feral management program also included wild horses and donkeys, and questions have been raised about the welfare of the animals killed.
Hey, buddy.
These distressing pictures show horses wounded and left to die. Ian Conway says the same thing happened to countless camels.
I've been out into areas where camels have been shot, and you can obviously see that they haven't died on the first shot, or haven't died at that point in time, but died perhaps hours later or perhaps days later. We were guaranteed that these animals would be killed and die instantaneously, but a lot of these are lung shots. They're wither shots, which is in the top of the thing. They're head shots where it hasn't penetrated the brain, and so these camels drop. And to be able to get down on the ground and inspect every one of these animals to make sure they were dead is an impossibility, especially with the numbers that they said they were shooting.
The government insists that the right procedures were followed during the cull.
All the aerial culling was performed or undertaken by highly experienced aerial shooters. They were all government shooters, so there was a high level of quality control. And also the project conducted audits of two things: adherence to the standard operating procedures, but also the project looked at the humaneness of the aerial culling, and a vet was used to do that, and a number of autopsies were undertaken and observations were made of actual culling operations. So there was a lot of checks and balances.
But it's not just the way the camels were killed that's causing a concern. A drastic drop in numbers has had a devastating effect on Australia's camel exports. This multi-species abattoir at Aileron Station near Alice Springs was killing about 125 camels a day, as well as cattle.
Bill. What do you got there, mate? A good bit of scotch?
Owner Gary Dan says the cull has cut his camels to about 80 a day, and he's now struggling to meet demand.
All marbling through it, low cholesterol.
And the demand's certainly there, and it'll take a while now to get a domestic herd going, but built up with killing also cattle. The multi-species abattoirs, in my opinion, was the way to go to get an industry going in Central Australia as far as, helping an abattoirs for beef, whereas that was our trouble before. With the cattle industry, if it's got dry, we sold our young steers because it was dry, so we had nothing heavier for the following years, and that was always a problem. I thought that with the camel, combined multi-species, it would be, viable.
So Gary, explain to me the process of what happens here.
Well, the big chiller is to our right. They come out.
Gary Dan believes the money spent on shooting camels could be put to better use.
All we want is a little bit of help. It's costing thousands, millions of dollars going out and shoot them. If we were to get a bit of freight subsidy to go out, we'll trap them, we'll do the work, but get half of what they've spent, or not even that, on going out and shooting these camels. I think it'd be viable, well, truly.
This one here is a nice carcass. It's about 200 kilo carcass. As you can see, very nice pink meat, white fat.
Most of Aileron Station's camel meat is sold overseas, but there's an emerging domestic market. Camel meat is processed in abattoirs like this one, but on the east coast of Australia, demand is growing, and the industry says it's struggling to keep up. For Taylor Wholesale Meats in Western Sydney is Australia's largest halal meat company. It supplies 2 to 3 tonnes of camel meat a month to about 200 stores, including Coles supermarkets. But supply is an issue.
It's a growing industry, no doubt. We'll all have difficulties getting supply. There'll be a bigger market overseas to export camels to around the world, but a lot of exporters currently just can't get enough supply.
Australia's Muslim community has an appetite for camel meat, particularly for religious festivals such as Ramadan. But suppliers say the wider Australian community is catching on, adding camel meat to a range of game now widely available.
It's all about game products. So they sell kangaroo, they sell buffalo, they sell duck, and there was just another product to add to the range. I believe that they don't see the growth of it. I believe it's a very big growing industry. I think they should probably start thinking how to farm the camels. I don't know if it's possible. And they'll probably have a better eating quality camel.
Coming up, Tahmina. This is your first time on a camel?
Yes, my first time.
Well, blow me down.
Farming camels may have a future and could be a huge export industry. But people like Ian Conway say that's a long way off, and the current wild camel harvest is on its knees.
We were well on the way at one stage that this was going to happen, but then the government, the Northern Territory government a few years ago cut the small amount of funding that they put into the camel industry, and bearing in mind at that time we were only just starting off and we were shipping out something like 5,400 camels a year out of the area. Now I know that that's not going to sustain the numbers in the area. We're looking at more like 30,000. So it is a sustainable industry. It just needs to have somebody that's got the brain power beyond being a bureaucrat sitting in an office saying, let's do this because this is the easy way out.